The invitation had been a mistake from the beginning. Brenda Washington stared at the cream-colored envelope that had arrived at her Seoul apartment 3 weeks ago, addressed to B. Washington, Unit 402. The elegant Korean calligraphy promised an evening of celebration at the Grand Hanok Hotel, one of those impossible weddings where tradition met extravagance, where centuries-old customs danced with modern luxury. She should have ignored it. Should have realized that in a city of 10 million people, mail sometimes found the wrong hands. But Brenda had been lonely. 6 months teaching English in Seoul, and she'd barely made friends beyond polite bows with her neighbors and stilted conversations with her students' parents. The other foreign teachers went to Itaewon every weekend, got drunk, complained about Korea, and rotated through the same tired conversations. Brenda wanted something more, something real. So when the invitation arrived, she'd let herself imagine. Maybe it was fate. Maybe the universe was telling her to take a chance, to step outside the comfortable prison of her routine. The invitation didn't specify whose wedding it was, just a date, time, and dress code. Traditional or formal attire welcome. Now, standing in the hotel's grand foyer, watching elegantly dressed guests glide past in hanbok and designer suits, Brenda felt the full weight of her mistake pressing down on her shoulders. Please like and subscribe, it helps the channel. She'd worn her best dress, with gold accessories her mother had given her before she'd left Atlanta. She'd thought she looked good in her bathroom mirror. Here, surrounded by Korea's elite, she felt like an imposter wrapped in desperation. I should leave, she whispered to herself, turning toward the entrance. The ceremony is about to begin. A young woman in hotel uniform gestured toward the main hall, her smile professional and unwavering. Please, this way. Before Brenda could protest, she found herself swept along with a group of guests, carried by the current of bodies moving toward the celebration. The hall opened before her like a scene from a dream, hundreds of white orchids cascading from the ceiling, traditional Korean lanterns glowing soft red and gold, and at the center, an aisle lined with rose petals leading to an altar where the couple would pledge their lives to each other. Brenda slipped into a seat in the very back row, making herself as small as possible. She'd stay for the ceremony, she decided. Just long enough to not be rude. Then she'd slip away before anyone noticed the stranger in their midst. The lights dimmed. Music began, a fusion of traditional gaeum and strings. The bride appeared, radiant in a modified hanbok of white and silver, and Brenda felt her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. There was something universal about weddings, she thought. Something that transcended culture and language. The hope, the promise, the belief that love could conquer everything that came after. She was so focused on the bride that she barely noticed the commotion near the altar. It started as a whisper, then grew into urgent murmurs. The groom wasn't at the altar. Guests began checking their phones, craning their necks. The bride stood frozen halfway down the aisle, her face hidden behind the traditional veil but her hands trembling visibly. Then the doors at the side of the hall burst open. A man strode in, and the energy in the room shifted like air pressure before a storm. He was tall for a Korean man, perhaps 6 feet, wearing a black suit that probably cost more than Brenda's entire year's salary. His hair was swept back, revealing sharp features and eyes that seemed to catalog everything in a single glance. 3 men flanked him, equally well-dressed, equally dangerous-looking. The wedding is postponed, he announced in Korean, his voice carrying across the silent hall. The groom has been detained on urgent business. The bride's father rushed forward, red-faced, shouting something Brenda couldn't quite follow. Her Korean was good enough for teaching and shopping, but not for whatever rapid-fire accusations were being flung. The man in black, something about his posture suggested he was the leader, raised one hand. The father fell silent. Your daughter will be compensated for this embarrassment, the man said, and Brenda heard the steel beneath the courtesy. This union was never meant to be. The groom made promises he couldn't keep to people he shouldn't have disappointed. Do-yoon Sai, an elderly man, stood from the front row. This is not the way. The way was decided when the Choi family thought they could expand their territory into Gangnam without permission, Do-yoon replied. This wedding was a lie built on a foundation of betrayal. Be grateful I'm stopping it before it went any further. Brenda's mind raced, translating what she could, filling in gaps. Territory. Permission. This wasn't just about a wedding. This was about power. And suddenly, Do-yoon's eyes locked onto hers. Across the vast hall, through hundreds of guests, his gaze found her in the back row like a heat-seeking missile. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or calculation. He moved, and the crowd parted like water. Within seconds, he was standing before her. This dangerous man with his dangerous eyes, and Brenda forgot how to breathe. "You're not on the guest list," he said in perfect English, his accent barely noticeable. I made a mistake," Brenda stammered. "The invitation was delivered to my apartment by mistake. I should go." "You speak Korean." "A little. Enough." "Then you understood what was said." "It wasn't a question." Brenda nodded, her mouth dry. Do-yoon studied her with an intensity that made her feel exposed, as if he could read every thought she'd ever had. Then, impossibly, he smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it transformed his face from merely handsome to something magnetic. "What's your name?" "Brenda. Brenda Washington." "American?" "Yes." "And you crashed a Korean wedding because?" "I was lonely," Brenda said, and immediately wanted to die of embarrassment. "That sounds pathetic." "I know. I'll just..." She tried to stand, but Do-yoon's hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm, kept her seated. "Stay," he said. "What?" "The wedding is cancelled, but there's still a reception. The guests expect dinner, drinks, entertainment. Stay." "Why would you want me to stay?" His smile widened slightly. "Because you're the most honest person in this room. And because," he glanced back at the chaos of guests beginning to leave, families arguing, the abandoned bride being escorted away by her mother. "I find I'm curious about a woman brave enough to attend a stranger's wedding." Before Brenda could respond, one of his men leaned in and whispered urgently in Korean. Do-yoon's expression hardened. "I have to handle something," he told Brenda. "But I'll find you at the reception. Don't leave." He was gone before she could protest, moving through the crowd with his entourage, leaving Brenda sitting alone with her heart hammering and her mind screaming at her to run. She didn't run. The reception hall was somehow more opulent than the ceremony space. Crystal chandeliers caught the light and scattered it across tables laden with both Korean delicacies and Western fare. An ice sculpture of two swans, meant for the cancelled wedding, was already melting in the corner, an unintentional metaphor for the evening. Brenda found herself at a table with other confused guests who decided free food was worth staying for. They eyed her curiously but said nothing. She picked at her bulgogi, hyper-aware of every glance, every whisper. "You're very far from home." She looked up to find an elegant woman in her 50s sitting down beside her. The woman's hanbok was museum quality, deep purple with gold embroidery, and her hair was swept up in a traditional style that somehow looked contemporary. "I'm sorry, I'm Mrs. Kang," the woman interrupted, her English flawless. "I saw Do-yoon speaking with you. That's unusual." "It was just a misunderstanding. I came by mistake." "There are no mistakes," Mrs. Kang said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Not in Do-yoon's world. If he spoke to you, there's a reason. Be careful, dear. He's not the kind of man who does anything without purpose." Before Brenda could ask what she meant, Mrs. Kang stood and glided away, leaving behind the faint scent of jasmine and a knot of anxiety in Brenda's stomach. The evening wore on. Brenda watched as guests networked, as alliances were formed and broken over dinner courses, as money and power changed hands in subtle gestures and quiet conversations. She was witnessing something she wasn't supposed to see. The machinery of Seoul's underworld dressed in formal attire. She was about to call it a night when Do-yoon reappeared. "Come with me," he said, offering his hand. Every instinct told her to refuse. Instead, she found herself taking his hand and following him through a side door, down a corridor lined with traditional Korean art, to a private room overlooking the hotel's garden. "Sit," he gestured to a low table surrounded by silk cushions. Brenda sat, grateful for the hours she'd spent practicing sitting on the floor in Korean restaurants. Do-yoon poured tea from a beautiful ceramic pot, the gesture surprisingly domestic from a man who'd just ruined a wedding. "You have questions," he said. "I have many questions. Starting with why I'm here." "You're here because you walked into my life at an interesting moment." He sipped his tea, his eyes never leaving hers. "Tell me, Brenda Washington from America, What do you know about the Korean Mafia? Probably only what I've seen in movies. Which I'm guessing is mostly wrong. Mostly, he agreed. But the essential truth is the same. Power, territory, loyalty, and consequences for those who break the rules. The groom tonight, he was supposed to marry into the Beck family. A union that would have given his family legitimate business connections and given the Becks protection. But he also made promises to expand into territory controlled by my family. He wanted to play both sides. So I reminded everyone that some alliances come with a price. Brenda set down her teacup. And you're telling me this because? Because you witnessed it. Because in my world, witnesses are either assets or liabilities. He leaned forward slightly. I'm trying to decide which you are. Fear should have overwhelmed her. Instead, Brenda felt something else. A strange calm, as if some part of her had been preparing for this moment without knowing it. I'm neither, she said firmly. I'm just a teacher who came to the wrong wedding. I'll forget everything I saw, go back to my life, and we'll never see each other again. And if I said that wasn't possible, then I'd ask what you want from me. Do-yoon smiled, a real smile this time, reaching his eyes. There it is. That directness. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Everyone speaks in circles, in implications and suggestions. But you ask the real question. He stood, walking to the window overlooking the garden. His reflection ghosted against the glass. I have a problem, Brenda. I'm 34 years old, and I run one of the largest operations in Seoul. I have money, power, respect. But I don't have legitimacy. Not the kind that comes from family, from the right marriage, from connections to Seoul's old money families. So marry someone from one of those families. I tried. 3 times. Each time, the women couldn't handle what I am, what I do. They wanted the money and status but not the reality. Or they were spies for rival families, trying to get close enough to destroy me from the inside. He turned back to face her. But you walked into this world by accident and you're not afraid. You're cautious, smart, but not afraid. And you have something I've never had. What's that? You're completely outside the system. No connections to any family here, no agenda, no preconceptions beyond what you've seen tonight. You're like a blank slate in a world where everyone's story has already been written. Brenda stood, understanding flooding through her with cold clarity. You want me to marry you? Not tomorrow, Do-yoon said calmly. But yes, eventually. A arrangement that would benefit both of us. You'd have security, money, freedom to pursue whatever you want. In exchange, you'd be my wife in public, attend events, provide the appearance of stability and normalcy. A Black American woman married to a Korean man running a criminal empire. It's unexpected enough to be memorable, foreign enough to explain why you're not connected to any local families. This is insane. Is it? Or is it just transactional? Most marriages are, if people are honest. At least I'm being clear about the terms up front. Brenda laughed, a sound somewhere between humor and hysteria. I came here looking for connection, for something real. And you're offering me a business arrangement with a criminal. I'm offering you a choice, Do-yoon corrected. You can walk away. Go back to your small apartment, your teaching job, your lonely weekends. Or you can take a risk on something bigger than anything you've ever imagined. You came to Korea looking for something. Maybe this is what you were looking for. And if I say no, then you say no. I'm not a monster, Brenda. I won't hurt you or threaten you. You'll go back to your life, and we'll never see each other again. But I think, he stepped closer, and she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle. I think you won't say no. Because you're here, aren't you? Still here, after everything you've seen. Still curious. He was right, and Brenda hated that he was right. Something in her, some reckless part she'd buried under years of being responsible and safe, was screaming at her to say yes. I need time, she said. You have 1 week. Here's my card. He handed her a simple black card with only a phone number. Call me when you've decided. Do-yoon moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you'd be magnificent. You have something that can't be bought or taught. You're genuine. That's rarer than diamonds in my world. Then he was gone, and Brenda was alone with a cup of cooling tea and a decision that could change everything. Brenda didn't call for 5 days. She went to work, taught her classes, graded papers. She tried to convince herself it had been a strange dream, a fever fantasy brought on by loneliness and jet lag. But at night, she'd pull out Do-yoon's card and stare at the number, her thumb hovering over her phone's dial pad. What was she waiting for? Permission? A sign? On the 6th day, everything changed. She was walking home from school when a car pulled up beside her. Not Do-yoon's, but similar. Expensive, black, windows tinted. 2 men stepped out, and Brenda's heart rate spiked. "Miss Washington," one said in accented English. "Please come with us. It's about Do-yoon." "What about him?" "He's been shot. He's asking for you." The hospital was private, exclusive, the kind of place where the elite went to have their secrets treated along with their wounds. The men led her through corridors that smelled of antiseptic and money, to a room guarded by more men in suits. Do-yoon was in bed, his chest wrapped in bandages, his face pale but alert. When he saw her, something in his expression softened. "You came," he said. "They said you were shot. What happened?" "The Choi family. Retaliation for the wedding." He gestured to the chair beside his bed. "Sit. I need to tell you something, and I don't have much time before the sedatives they gave me kick in." Brenda sat, her hands trembling. "I lied to you," Do-yoon said. "Not about what I am. That's all true. But about why I want to marry you. I don't understand." The marriage proposal wasn't just about legitimacy. It was about getting you close, keeping you in my world. He took a breath, wincing with pain. "That invitation you received, it wasn't a mistake. I sent it." Brenda felt the world tilt. "What?" "3 months ago, I was at a coffee shop in Hongdae. You were there, sitting by the window, grading papers. A student came up to you, a little girl, maybe 7 years old. She'd spilled juice on her uniform and was crying. Do you remember?" Brenda did remember. The little girl had been inconsolable, worried about what her mother would say. Brenda had walked with her to a nearby store, bought her a new uniform with her own money, helped her change in the bathroom. It had been nothing, just kindness. "I watched you," Do-yoon continued. "Watched you spend your own money, your own time, for a child you didn't know. Watched you walk her back to her school to make sure she was safe. Then I had you investigated." "You what?" "I know it sounds terrible, but in my world, when something catches your attention, you learn everything you can about it. I found out you'd been in Seoul for 3 months, that you were kind to everyone, that you volunteered at a shelter for teenage runaways on weekends. I learned that you'd left a good job in Atlanta to teach here because you wanted adventure, wanted to experience something real." He reached for her hand, and despite everything, she let him take it. "I fell in love with you that day in the coffee shop, Brenda. With your kindness, your authenticity, your courage. But I knew you'd never agree to date someone like me if I approached you honestly. So I created an opportunity, sent you that invitation, hoping you'd be curious enough to come, hoping I'd get a chance to talk to you." Tears burned Brenda's eyes. "That's manipulative." "It is," he agreed. "It's terrible and manipulative and exactly the kind of thing someone in my world does. But it's also true. All of it. The attraction, the admiration, the desire to have you in my life. The business arrangement I proposed was real, but so was everything else. Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I almost died tonight. Because I realized that if I died without you knowing the truth, I'd die having committed one more deception in a life full of them. And because," he squeezed her hand gently, "because you deserve to make your decision based on the whole truth, not just the parts one wanted you to see." Brenda sat back, her mind reeling. She should be angry. She should storm out and never look back. Instead, she found herself asking, what happened to the real invitation? The one meant for whoever lived in my apartment. It never existed. The previous tenant moved out 4 months ago. The apartment was empty when I sent you that invitation. And the wedding? Tonight. That was real. The Choi family's betrayal was real. My interruption was real. I saw an opportunity to show you my world honestly, without pretense. I thought if you could see what I am and still choose me, it would mean something. This is crazy, Brenda whispered. Yes. You're a criminal. Yes. You manipulated me, lied to me, investigated me without my permission. All true. And you're telling me you love me? After one conversation. Do-yoon's smile was sad. Love doesn't follow logic, Brenda. I've learned that the hard way. But yes, I love you. I loved you before I spoke to you, and I'll love you whether you walk out that door right now or stay. Brenda stood, pacing to the window. Outside, Seoul glittered with lights, millions of people living their ordinary lives, unaware of the extraordinary choice being offered to her in this hospital room. She thought about her life before Korea, the safe job, the predictable weekends, the relationship that ended because neither of them felt anything beyond comfortable. She'd come here looking for something she couldn't name, some experience that would make her feel alive. And here it was, wrapped in danger and deception and impossible honesty. I need you to answer one question, she said, turning back to Do-yoon. And I'll know if you're lying. Ask. If I walk away, will you actually let me go? No following, no protection detail shadowing me, no more manipulation. Do-yoon held her gaze. Yes. If you walk away, you walk away. I won't contact you, won't have you followed, won't interfere in your life. You have my word. Brenda studied him, this dangerous man in a hospital bed, and saw the truth in his eyes. And if I stay, what does that actually mean? It means dating. Real dating, dinner, movies, getting to know each other. It means I tell you the truth about my life, my work, and you get to decide if you can live with it. It means I introduce you to my world slowly, give you time to adjust. And if, someday, you decide you want to marry me, it'll be because you choose it, not because I've backed you into a corner. That's a terrible business arrangement, Brenda said. Very inefficient. I'm willing to renegotiate the terms. She laughed despite herself. Then she walked back to his bedside and sat down. I have conditions, she said. Name them. No more lies. If I'm going to consider this insanity, I need complete honesty, even if it's uncomfortable. Agreed. I keep teaching. I'm not giving up my job, my students, my independence. Agreed. And you have to meet my mother. Eventually. She's going to have a lot of questions about the man her daughter is dating. Do-yoon's expression softened into something almost vulnerable. I'd be honored to meet her. One more thing, Brenda said. That little girl in the coffee shop, the one who spilled juice on herself. What happened to her? She's doing well. Her mother was grateful for your help. The family owns a restaurant in Hongdae. Why? Because that's how I'll know if this is real. If we do this, if I take this risk, I want to stay connected to that part of myself. The part that helps people, that does ordinary kindness. I need to know that being with you won't turn me into someone I don't recognize. It won't, Do-yoon said firmly. That kindness, that genuine heart, that's why I love you. I don't want to change it. I want to protect it. Brenda took a deep breath. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll try. I'll go on dates with you, get to know you, see if this impossible thing could actually work. But Do-yoon, if at any point I feel like I'm losing myself, if this world starts to poison who I am, I'm walking away. Deal. Deal. He lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it gently, a gesture so old-fashioned and sweet that it made her heart ache. You won't regret this, he promised. I already regret it, Brenda said, but she was smiling. But I think I'd regret not trying even more. 6 months later, Brenda stood in front of a mirror, adjusting her hanbok. It was white and gold, traditional but with a modern cut that suited her figure. Behind her, her mother fussed with the embroidery, tears streaming down her face. My baby, she whispered. Getting married in Korea to a man who... She trailed off. To a man who loves me, Brenda finished. Who's honest with me, who respects me, who supported my work at the shelter and my teaching. Yes, his life is complicated. But Mom, I've never felt more alive, more myself, than I have these past 6 months. Are you sure? Brenda thought about the journey that had brought her here, The mistaken invitation that wasn't mistaken, the ruined wedding that led to her own, the deception that had become the most honest relationship she'd ever had. She thought about Do-yoon, who'd kept every promise, who'd introduced her slowly to his world, who'd stood beside her at the shelter and handed out meals to teenagers who had nowhere else to go, who'd flown her mother out first class to meet him, sat through 3 hours of interrogation, and answered every question with unflinching honesty, who'd looked at her last week and said, "You make me want to be a better man. Not for my business, not for my reputation, for you, for us." "I'm sure," Brenda said. The wedding was small, not the spectacle of that first night, but an intimate gathering of Do-yoon's closest friends and her family, flown in from Atlanta. As she walked down the aisle toward him, she saw the wonder in his eyes, the disbelief that she was real, that she'd chosen him. The lesson she'd learned wasn't what she'd expected. It wasn't about love conquering all or opposites attracting. It was simpler and more complex than that. Sometimes the wrong door leads to the right